Hello again, everyone. This is Mr. G, and welcome to part 2 of our lecture series on intervals. Part 1 discussed what intervals were and why we assign certain numbers to them based on the literal distance between the two different notes that make up an interval. Just a brief review before we get started on part 2. Say we have our C again. If I wanted to find the note that was 5 steps away in our staircase, C being step 1, we go 2, 3, 4, 5. And because G is 5 steps away from C, this is called a fifth. Similarly, if we were to go 3 steps up in our staircase, with C being step 1, 2, 3, E is 3 steps away, and we call that a third, etc., etc. So part 1 gave us the distance, the number. Part 2 is going to talk about quality, which in a manner of speaking is the flavor or the particular variety of interval. And there are 3 main types that we're going to be talking about in this lecture. Major, minor, and perfect intervals. There are 2 other interval qualities that we will cover in part 2, but for this discussion, we are only concerned with major, minor, and perfect. You'll notice that I have 2 scales here, a C major scale and a C minor scale, and I'm going to show you how to use each of those scales to find each of the quality of intervals. Before we do that, though, I would be remiss if I did not bring up this word, diatonic. Diatonic, the definition according to Webster, is involving only notes proper to the prevailing key without chromatic alteration. Now, if that sounded a little bit too complicated, I understand. Let me break it down for you like this. A scale is considered diatonic. The notes of a scale are considered diatonic if the only sharps or flats are within the key signature. So if we look at C major, for instance, moving this out of the way a little, you notice that there are no extra sharps or flats in the notes. Key signature has no sharps or flats, so therefore all of these notes are diatonic. They are within that key signature. Similarly, if we look at C minor, you notice that there are no extra flats, just those that are present in the key signature. So E flat, A flat, and B flat are the only flats. There are no extras added. Therefore, all of these notes are diatonic as well. They obey the key signature with nothing else being added. So that's what diatonic means. And you use a diatonic scale, again, no extra stuff added, to help you find major and minor interval qualities. We'll start with major. C. Let's go back to the third that we made earlier. We know that E is a third away from C. Because E is diatonic to C major, meaning it's just naturally occurring, this is a major third. And I'll write that in like this so we can keep track. Put a bracket, capital M to represent major, and then a 3. And that is how you write an interval. It's quality followed by a number. Let's do this now with A. A, I believe, is 6 steps up in our staircase. So C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep. Because A is diatonic to C major, this distance is considered a major sixth. And I'll draw a bracket up here. Include a capital M and a number 6. You can do the same thing with the 7th. B is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 away from C. Because B is diatonic to C major, that is the distance of a major 7. And I'm sure you figured out the pattern by now. It's exactly the same thing with minor. Just for the sake of example, I'll walk you through a couple of these. We'll start with C. And then let's play E flat. E flat, that's still 3 steps away because it's like the 3rd step of our staircase. E flat is diatonic to C minor. So therefore, this distance is a minor third. And to indicate minor, I'm going to use a lowercase m and a 3. We'll do one more, this time with, let's do the 7th. B flat is 7 steps away from C in C minor. Because this is diatonic, that is a minor 7th. Lowercase m with the 7. Special exception though. The only one that does not follow this pattern is the seconds. Because no matter what, in C major or C minor, that's going to be a major second. C to D. But that's easy to remember because this, a major second, is just a whole step. If you want a minor second, that's just a half step. And that counts no matter where you start on the scale. And now let's talk briefly about perfect intervals. I'm going to use blue for that. Perfect would be fourths, fifths, and octaves. So the distance from C to F is 4. And we call that a perfect fourth in both major and minor scales. And you'd indicate that with a P followed by the number 4. Fifths are also perfect. So for instance, from C to G. 5 steps away in both major and minor. So then we would label that with a P, 5. The last perfect interval is actually the octave. You don't actually use the word octave to describe, you don't use the word perfect to describe an octave. Because it's just understood that it is perfect by default. So you do still use a P though when you're using shorthand. So an octave would be labeled P8 because an octave is 8 steps away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is how you find intervals using diatonic scales in C major and C minor. Now I'm going to expand on intervals a little bit further. So far, I've only given you C major and C minor. We've only found intervals that are a set distance away from C. Well, it doesn't have to be only C. What if we wanted to find something that's a certain distance from F? Well, this is where our discussion of diatonic comes back into play. Give me one moment and I'm going to type in an F major scale and I'll explain what I mean. Okay, now I'm back with an F major scale. So the reason why I wrote this out is because if you wanted to find an interval that was a major 3rd, 6th, or 7th above F, you would need to do it as though it were diatonic to F major, meaning you need to imagine an F major scale in your head and then figure out the right note from there. So it's easier said than done. It's much easier to write out the scale and then play it for yourself. So let's see, a major 3rd up from F, a diatonic major 3rd up from F. That would be 1, 1, 2, 3. That's A. A diatonic sixth up from F would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. D. As a diatonic seventh would be E. And you do that every time you have a different bottom note. So you're trying to find the distance from B flat. You would need to think of a B flat major or minor scale, depending on what interval you're looking for. If you're asked to find the distance from A, a certain interval from A, you need to think in an A key or an E key, etc. And that can get a little bit confusing. So I'm going to show you a different way to find intervals using half steps. Let me pull up this handy dandy guide here. And then I'll put my piano keyboard back. Just to make things a little bit simpler, I'll cover up the notes as well. So how you use this chart. There's 3 distinct columns. This represents notes above and including C. This column says how many half steps away from C each of these notes is. So for instance, D is 2 half steps away from C. 1, 2. And then it tells you what that interval name is. So in this case, from C to D is a major second. So let's pretend that this note were not C, because we've done that already. Let's try G. Let's say our starting note was G, and we wanted to find a perfect fifth up from G. So then we would need to go up 7 half steps. So G, this does not count as 1. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 7 half steps up is a perfect fifth. And that is how you find it using the half step method. It does not always have to be upwards, though. It can be constructed downwards. Let's still use our example with our note being G. And we wanted to find a minor third below G. Well, a minor third away is 3 half steps. So instead of going up, we would go down. So find our G. Go 3 half steps down. 1, 2, 3. And that's E. Another example, let's try a minor sixth. If we wanted to find a minor sixth down from G, we'd have to go down 8 half steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that is how you use the half-step method to find both major and minor intervals. I will include this guide as part of the lecture materials so that you can have access to it at any point in time as you compose, as you do future quizzes, and it's just a very handy reference to have. And with that, we have covered both intervals, their distance, their quality, and how to find them using diatonic scales, major and minor, as well as how to find them using the half-step method. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please get in touch with me at any time. It seems simple, but that doesn't mean you should shy away from asking if there is something that you still find confusing. You always have my ear. Let me know if you need any assistance, and music be with you, always.